So, hi everybody, welcome to ATMS Natural Health Week 2023, and thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great uptake. We've got over close to 40 people, I think, coming along. So that's delightful, and I hope that all the other events for ATMS have also had that many people as well, because I think, you know, we're part of a big resurgence in people trying to find their way back, trying to find their way back to a state of health and wellness that is our birthright. So before we get started, I'd just like to invite everyone to, if you'd like to close your eyes, if you don't want to close your eyes, no matter, and we'll just do a little bit of an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to just pay my deep respect and give my deep thanks to the elders and the ancestors who've looked after the lands that I'm currently coming to you from, Yuin country, down on the south coast of New South Wales. This place is exquisite, as are all places, until they get damaged. So let's hope that through our actions here all together and all that we do every day, and our passion for natural health therapies and dealing with our own natures, which is part of the bigger nature, that will help regrid us all and regrid this planet and really do the ancestors proud, and bringing back the seas, the lands, the waterways and the skies to the pristine state that we found them in just a few centuries ago. So thanks everybody very much for joining us tonight. And I give deep respect to your ancestors too, who've brought you here so that we're all in little squares talking to each other. I'm Cate, and I'm from SoulAdvisor. And next to me, I have Tanya, who's also from SoulAdvisor. So for those of you that don't know us, we're part of a small team. We've been holding SoulAdvisor and steering it through rocky waters for the last few years with natural therapies. It's been an interesting time, I think you'll all agree. So tonight we've got, I've been really looking forward actually to doing what we're going to be doing tonight, which is bringing together a bunch of our hugely qualified, hugely experienced therapists and practitioners to talk about a concept of old ways new. So to talk about the role that natural therapies and us as natural therapists are playing in this time in 2023, and what a dynamic kind of time it is. Nobody knows which way things are going to really go. And I hope that we'll have a bit of fun talking about that and explore a little bit about the therapies that these four practitioners represent. So I'd just love to see, not that we can, but some of you, we can see your face. So if you feel to bring your face to the story, then do. And I'd just love to see a show of hands to see how many of the other people that are here are also therapists. Or maybe you could even put that in the chat if you are or you aren't. You're a therapist, Lydia? Great. Fantastic. I know you are, Pauline, therapist extraordinaire. Carmen, are you a therapist?
No, I don't classify myself as a therapist, because I believe that yoga is a lifestyle of great wellness. So it doesn't require the title of therapist or this, that, or the other. I'm a preacher of pure yoga.
Oh, I love that. Okay, fantastic. That's a good reframe. And Bernadette, are you a therapist? Oh, I've lost her there. I can't quite see. All right, so a little bit of a mixture of those that are and those that aren't. I personally believe that we've all got the capacity to heal ourselves and others. So it's a bit of a, what kind of line is that? Calling one person a therapist and one person not, or one person a preacher of wellness and one person not. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And I'd love to introduce the four people that we're going to talk to this evening. First of all, I'd love to introduce Emma Drady, who is a nutritionist in Balmain in Sydney. And Emma, would you like to just say a few little words about yourself before I botch it?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Emma. I'm a naturopath, and I am practicing predominantly online, which is part of the whole COVID experience. But I do also see patients face-to-face in Paddington from a really beautiful clinic in Paddington. And I specialize mainly in women's health. I'd say 90% of the people that I speak to on a day-to-day are women. And that kind of varies from anywhere from the start of period all the way up to menopause and all the other juicy bits that come in between there, including, you know, thyroid, stress, gut health, all the other fun things that we experience throughout life. But yeah, that's my main specialty. So yeah, that's me.
Beautiful. Well, you couldn't get much closer to nature than the cycles that a woman goes through in her life, could you?
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, trying to bring them back into the flow. So, and then we have Angela Sciberras, who is coming to us from Sydney also. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Cate. As Cate said, my name's Angela Sciberras, and I'm actually in Penrith at the moment in Western Sydney. I've been practicing here for just shy of 20 years, and work as a kinesiologist mainly, although I have sort of, I guess you could say, evolved into other forms of kinesiology. So neurotraining, which we work very deeply into the connection between the brain and the nervous system, and also moving more into resolve beyond neurology. So when we start to move into those sorts of practices, we look at moving away from technique and more into really diving into the unresolved parts or traumas or events, situations within the body, mind, spirit that we need to address. And once they are addressed and resolved, the body certainly just goes ahead and does the job itself without any technique whatsoever. Often in the session, almost I like to look at it like a super sleuth and putting together the pieces of the puzzle, and eventually the system gets to see, oh yeah, I see what it is now, and I can put the rest of it back together myself without any help. So that's really great. I'm also a clinically trained therapeutic harpist, particularly focusing in on palliative, and I've spent since 2006 with thousands of hours and hundreds of palliative patients, many of which passing away in my presence, learning how to use harmony, sound, rhythm to help people pass. But my day-to-day is in the clinic with kinesiology and resolve. So it's something that I'm passionate about, bringing in biochemical and facial analysis around biochemics, and also iridology, using components of iridology to map out what's happening for someone on a constitutional level. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. So thank you for having me, Cate, and inviting me.
I'm delighted to have you here, Angela. Angela's got so many strings. As you've just mentioned, you've got so many strings to your bow. And I've also read Angela's amazing book, and you'll have to remind me what that's called, but wow, what a book.
Yeah, look, it's certainly one that came over many, many years. And I can show you a copy in a moment, everyone. I can go into more details about that actually. So yeah. That would be They Set Me Forth is the name of it. The greatest Australian story never told. So it's not been told yet. We're getting there. It's starting to unfold, but I think the greatest Australian story is yet to happen here in terms of healing ancestral wounds and connections with the land. So that's
Absolutely.
what it is. Yeah.
And it's such an interesting book and such an interesting story. So please hold it up in a minute so that we can all.
Thank you. I will. I certainly will.
And Rebel up there in Port Macquarie.
Hi, Cate.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Interesting topic, New Age made old. So I was really intrigued by that topic, and thanks for putting this together. SoulAdvisor and ATMS for Natural Medicine Week. I am a naturopath, and I went straight from school. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do, except back then, nobody really knew what a naturopath was. So I used to say, I'm going to study to be a witch doctor. So that was back in 1990 at Nature Care College, which is in a warehouse above the car park. And since then, both naturopathy as a profession has grown, as has Nature Care College, which is now a multi-storey building. And we've got many colleges around Australia now teaching naturopaths. So naturopathy's moved into a Bachelor of Health Science, which is also interesting and brought with it some new ways of showing to the world what naturopathy is. And I consider myself a very traditional practitioner, so also with the skills of iridology and reflexology, shiatsu, NLP. I've also gone on and done yoga studies, so I teach yoga and am a yoga therapist. So bringing in that whole perspective of mind, body, soul into what I do. Love sharing and love using these new mediums that we have got, such as Zoom, to bring the amazing traditional practices out to more and more people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow. I didn't realize you went to Nature Care back then. So did I, back in the iteration before that in Chatswood at the back of the Adyar bookshop in 19, whatever that was.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah. So things have moved on since then for Nature Care.
Certainly have.
Yeah. Joe, are you with us? Can we hear you? No, we can't hear you. So Joe is going to keep trying so that we can hear her, but I'm going to introduce Joe because she's somebody that I've known for many, many years who's been passionate about being a lay person in the health field, as well as now an incredible practitioner. And she works with remedial massage and lymphatic drainage and visceral manipulation and all kinds of modalities. You know, Joe's one of those people that even before she was qualified in anything, you'd ring up and ask her what to do about your health. So she's just, you know, it's been a real passion for her forever and ever. And I am really looking forward to having you here. What I would do, Joe, is try coming onto Zoom through your telephone, see if that works and see if you can do that. Yeah. Anyway, that's us. So here we are, and we'll start the conversation just by opening with some very kind of general concepts of I guess, our similarities rather than our differences. So as you've just heard, we're covering an awful lot of fields here, but you know, what is it that makes us a natural therapist, a complementary therapist, an alternative therapist, a traditional therapist? How, you know, trying to put a lasso around those particular professions. I'd love to hear how you would think about that and how you feel about that nomenclature. So, you know, it's an interesting period we're living in 2023 where, you know, naturopathy's been around with us forever. So has massage, so has, you know, looking in someone's eyes and checking out their iridological status, you know, all of those things, and understanding our hormonal flow. Like, really, this is something that we've had to do as humans on the planet forever and ever. So why are we suddenly calling it complementary, alternative? You know, should we be calling it natural? I'm very interested to hear from any of you what you feel about, firstly, what we're called, and where's the perimeter of those big names? Yeah.
It's a really good question, Kate, and it's probably speaks to why I belong to Australian Traditional Medicine Society, because I really do like the term traditional. I'm not a fan of CAM or complementary and alternative medicine. I remember years ago in Melbourne, somebody wanted to interview me, and the question was, you know, the differences between traditional and naturopathic medicine. And the first thing I did was get on there and vehemently stand up to the point that traditional is actually the old ways, it's the naturopathic ways, it's the natural ways, it's the holistic ways. And I guess they're considered complementary in the face of orthodoxy being the main form of prescribed medication and the most accessed form of medicine by Australians today, in that it's Medicare rebatable, and you know, natural medicine, you know, is no longer even on your private health schemes, which we can talk about if you'd like. So I really like to use the word traditional, and I'm also a fan of holistic with a W. Holistic, yeah, it's a whole well-being, body, mind, spirit, all of it put together.
Yes, holistic is a beautiful term, and you know, holistic comes from the same root source as the word heal as well. Heal means to make whole. So, you know, I think that is a beautiful theme for what we all do. You know, it really does help people come back into a sense of wholeness, a complete unit, that then when you are whole, then things don't attack you, you know, disease states don't tend to attack you, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm really interested how that feels to you, Emma, when the word holistic, is that a word that you use in conjunction with what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the common thread that we all have in our practice is that we're looking at the individual as a whole person rather than just their set of symptoms that they're experiencing at the moment. You know, when someone comes for a naturopathy consultation, it's not just, oh, here's a herb for that symptom, see you later. We're trying to understand them, their lifestyle, how all the different systems in their body are working together, and really educating them and treating them as a whole person, including their life, their emotions, their mentality, their spiritual essence, all of those components that makes them a whole person, which is what I think, you know, kinesiology and yoga and naturopathy all have in common, is that we're looking at the whole person, and holism is really fundamental part of what makes us traditional medicine practitioners. That's what traditional medicine was really rooted in originally, and I think that's the difference in allopathic and our traditions.
It's so beautifully put. Thank you very much. You know, like Angela, you were saying when you were first introducing yourself, the same thing, roughly, that, you know, if you get the person's neurosystem to work and you regrid them, then you just step out of the way and the body takes care of itself. So it was really reminding me of a book that I hope some of you have read, and if you haven't, please do. It's called Wilding. Has anybody read Wilding? Oh, such a beautiful book, and it's wilding of nature is what it's talking about. So it's talking about the incredibly quick turnaround once poison stopped being dumped on the ground, and once you stop disturbing the surface of the soil, and once you just stop trying to decide which creature should live and die on your land and just leave it be, that suddenly this incredibly biodiverse, robust system springs up. And, you know, that's nature big picture, but our own nature also responds to that kind of a holistic approach. So, yeah, Angela, how do you feel about the word holistic?
Oh my goodness, I think that's probably the only way to describe the way that we work, and maybe, dare I say, the most productive way to work is to look at someone in a holistic manner. And I think that's why over time, as much as I started in kinesiology and the root cause of symptoms, like the underlying root causes seeding in things like trauma or unresolved experiences, unresolved emotional build up, or whatever people like to, how they like to term it. You know, you could just focus in on that, but at the same time, you know, as you start to broaden out, look at iridology now, when it's not my focus, iridology, but I do love, once I was certified, to look into the person's eyes and get a sense of their makeup and their blueprint that goes back to like the thumbprint that iridology is. And all of a sudden I can look into their eye and describe their bowels to them. And they think I've actually been, you know, spying on them through Alexa or something, because you could literally at times see the way that their bowel functions through that iris. Yes, there could be emotional components to what is, I guess, triggering the bowels to react and respond in a certain way, but they may already be on a constitutional level vulnerable to certain states. And so it's not to say that that person will have to experience that state, but in the right environment. And I think we would all agree that Bruce Lipton has given so much to our systems of work, in that it's shown that it's often the environment that changes even genetics, the way that our genetics, not how they are, but how they are expressed. So, you know, that can be a myriad of things in my experience in kinesiology, from toxins to, you know, biochemical issues to trauma, as to what's at the root cause. And so unless we tend to look at the person in a holistic way, we can miss what's really going on for somebody. So I think it's the only way to look at the human being, really.
I like that you said it's an efficient, I don't think that was the word you used, but efficient way of doing things, because, you know, again, in that book Wilding, they talk about how if they had taken it on, they would have had to spend an awful lot of money in developing systems and trialing and working what does, what doesn't work, but just to step out of the way or find a way to clear the system and bring it back to a I'm never going to use that word balanced, but to bring it back into a homeostatic, dynamic, interactive system that where one bit is talking to another and the trauma's out of the system as much as possible, that then the body can get on with coming back. Yeah, it is efficient, you know, the body looks after itself. You don't have to come to a session every week for 3 years. Can I just see if we've got Jo now? Do we have you, Jo? Oh. No, she's still not there. Try turning it off mute, hun, and then we'll see. You're on mute at the moment. Yeah. Anyway, just pipe up when you come through. Yep. Okay.
So, Kate, there was an interesting thing that I came across recently, which is Jane Goodall's research.
Can you?
Oh, she's here. So let's get
She's
from Jo.
here.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Hi, Jo.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the problem with my technology. Yeah, and I just want to say a little bit more, Kate, if I could.
Please do.
So, yeah, I don't know if you know, Kate, I originally trained in the 80s as a massage therapist and prior in the 70s as a nurse. And so my health background goes back quite a fair bit. And before I retrained again, I've done 2 different trainings in yoga. And yeah, and I'm really fascinated with the as everybody has said, the whole body and mind continuum that comes from our birth right through. So yeah.
Yay. Well, no wonder you knew so much when I asked you all those times before.
Yeah.
Now I know. Great. Yeah. So and Rebel, you were just about to talk about Jane Goodall's approach.
So she's done some really interesting research with gorillas and the way they communicate. And we can take the term whole to a much bigger scale when we look at the way that gorillas almost telepathically communicate with one another through the jungle. And we as human beings also have this skill if we pay attention. And so there's a lot more going on that we can't see, as we know with the light spectrum. There's so much more that we can't see than we do actually see. And when we start to pay attention and when we encourage tuning into ourselves, there's a huge field of energy out there, which is what naturopathy comes back to, and what homeopathy and all these things like kinesiology and touch work, so massage and shiatsu and breath work come back to restoring vital force. And that these things that challenges us, like you're talking about balance and whether or not it's a good word, the things that challenge us, you know, give us hormesis, this ability to take on challenge and right the ship.
Yeah, it's actually, you know, that constant being off balance. And if we're talking yoga practice, Jo Tauro, you know, that feeling of having to take yourself to the edge and be a little bit over the edge so that you can find the new part of you that can come up and be useful in day-to-day life. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, that testing and retesting, moving in and out. It's lovely. And I love the way that what you're saying, Rebel, it's so true, that intuition, you know, like that bigger field, that morphic field that we're part of, that brings us health if we let it, you know, that gets very, very interfered with in this present day, doesn't it really? Because we've got so many things that go on that don't respect the fact that we have a morphic field, that we have an energetic field that is affecting our health. And you know, Emma, I love the way that you just brought spirit right in there when you were talking about holism. You know, it's been something that as an older person who's been around for a while, if I started speaking about spirit when I first started doing yoga, well, maybe not yoga, you know, you could talk about it in whispers, couldn't you, Pauline? But if you went out to the general population and said, you know, and body, mind, and spirit. Spirit, you know, people would get really, really edgy around that. Yeah. Yeah. So how much is spirit part of what you do, Jo Tauro, when you think of the word spirit?
When I think of the word spirit, I can't separate it from mind and body. It's part of the sheaths of what we know as the koshas in yoga. But when I think of spirit, I think of, you know, I have a human being coming to see me, but they have a spirit, and that spiritual part of their life, whether they acknowledge it or not, is coming with them when they come and lay down on my table. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm thinking of my First Nations friends, and around here we've been doing a lot of work just looking at what is wellness, you know, after all, and that whole paradigm that we've all been working under of body, mind, spirit. You know, the basic reframe is not body, mind, spirit, but body, country, spirit. And what I love about that is that, you know, we've been kind of taught that we're the body and we're the mind, and then we might have the spirit here, but that mind that's kind of caught in this skull is not real. Like every bit of knowledge, every bit of connection, every bit of wisdom that we've received comes to us in a continual kind of wave from everything that is nature, everything that is country, and from all other humans who are also part of nature and country. So it's a really, perhaps a Western construct of cutting off and thinking of mind as just in our own little bodies. It's an interesting one for me to think into.
It reminds me of Avatar with the tree of life and that connection.
Yes. Beautiful image. Yeah, beautiful image. So, okay, well, we've done holism to death. Let's go into traditional. Do you like that word, Angela, traditional?
Isn't that, it's an interesting word when you think about the word traditional, because you think, for me, who's worked musically, my first degree was in music actually, and I did a fourth year in ethnomusicology, or the study of world musics, and taught, actually I lectured at university level in music and culture from around the world, which would be probably seen very differently nowadays. You know, a white lady standing up in front of a class teaching about music for the world, it probably wouldn't be as acceptable or exciting as it was back then, and quite controversial in a way. But these were the days when, you know, we talked about traditional musics, or if we think about traditional therapies, but it's what tradition, whose tradition? It's hard, you know, and where does the tradition go back to? And so I guess traditional is a good way, a good easy way to explain what we do, to bring it back to basics of what's been around for quite some time. And yet I think that's possibly shifting and changing as we move into periods of time when we start to look at science, in some ways finally catching up with what people of traditional backgrounds have known for a very, very long time. Even things like, you know, information about mitochondria, and the fact that our relationship with the sun, and when we say to one another, sending you love and light, well, it's actually all about light. And so much of our dysfunction nowadays is due to a dysregulated relationship with circadian rhythms and with light. We're not receiving enough morning light and full spectrum light. And you start looking at people like Dr. Pollock and his research on water, and something called exclusive zone water, and how it's crystalline and it's inside every cell of the human body. And so we can start to see why kinesiology works, why so many of the therapies that we do work, because on a quantum level, the science of it is starting to catch up to what we've always had a sense of, or been told by the traditional peoples. But finally we're starting to know, actually, you know, it's beyond, in a way, our own science, and finally science is just proving what the traditional people of the world have passed down, whether it be Chinese and acupuncture over thousands of years and their knowledge. You look at the study of the Maya around time and multi-dimensionality, and I do a lot of that work in my clinic. All cultures, I think, have something to offer in terms of what's traditional to them. And I think as natural therapists, you probably agree that somewhere along the line, we just start to pick up tradition from what's good, what's good and what works. And lots of it doesn't, and lots of it may not be appropriate for now, or may not have been as, it might be just superstition, because there is that. And we work that out in clinic, what becomes superstition. But then we go even deeper to know that sometimes if someone believes that something that's superstitious is true, their body will allow it to be so. So it's such a funny thing, isn't it? So I think traditional is a good word, and when we look deeper into it, it starts to peel away at like, well, what tradition, whose tradition, and what exactly does that mean? That's actually a really good question I've never asked myself, actually. Yeah.
How far back does that extend? You know, exactly.
Yeah.
It's complex, isn't it? And how many times have we been here before and been wiped out, and then it comes up again? And you know, do we find ourselves coming back to the same point? In the yogic context, a very exciting thing is happening at the moment, Angela, with the with Yoga Australia. We've just Nangwale Aboriginal Corporation, of which I'm lucky enough to be part of, has been putting together a cultural training that they're asking all of their practitioners, their yoga practitioners, to do, and they're going to hold that on their website, etc., etc. So as part of that, it's exciting. Rebel's part of that particular organisation, Yoga Australia.
That's great.
Yeah, and we got it done finally on Sunday, which is 12 years of really getting to that point. So anyway,
wonderful to hear.
Yes, oh boy, a bit of a job. Anyway, the thing about that is that one of the aspects that we're pointing out is that we're clever enough to hold all these systems in our head. You know, we're much bigger than we think we are in terms of intelligence and capacity. Of course, we all know that. So when we have presented this, with the last part of it is a session on two-eye seeing, which is an Mutakak way of speaking, which comes from the Mikau people up in where is it? It's right up in Canada somewhere there. Anyway, the whole idea is that, you know, one way is scientific, one way is the First Nations way of seeing it, and they have a lot of similarity, but the real juice, the real excitement comes of starting to move those two ways of being into a interaction, a rich pattern of interaction that can only be good. And as you say, there'll be some things that we let go of, and I think we'll let go of certain allopathic concepts, and we'll let go of certain non-allopathic or holistic concepts too, as we move through that process of threshing out, well, what did the Pacific nations know about health? What did the, you know, way up there in Iceland, what did they discover? And we've all been out on these journeys, so maybe perhaps we're bringing it all together.
Yeah, bringing it all together. And I think what Angela referred to is really brilliant, because I'm into that level of study as well with quantum. And recently a neurosurgeon highlighted some of the work and commentary of Sadhguru, in that we are light beings. And he said, from our perspective now, this is something we know to be true through the use of machinery and modern technologies. We can see that what these yogis are speaking about is actually true. So this quantum field, this quantum science aspect is bringing the new and marrying it to the old and saying, well, you know, 5,000 years ago, there might have been mention of light and the movement of energy in the body. And that was the language they had back then to describe it. And now with modern technology, we're actually able to kind of see and prove what it is that they were experiencing back then. So I love that. That makes my heart sing, because, you know, sometimes science can, you know, often be unfortunately affected by vested interests. But when something comes through and it just says, you know, plain as day, this is what we're seeing, and the evidence is pure and clean, I'm like, yay! I love what I do.
You would love to dive into a gentleman called Dr. Jack Cruz with a K.
I know
and
him
his
well.
work on quantum biology. I encourage everybody to get out there and check his work out, the things that he's discovered. And many others. Also, there's a wonderful woman named Carrie Bennett, and she's on Instagram. she is incredible. I've interviewed Carrie, and she is just passionate about all things quantum, in particular light, and understanding that something dropped for me today around sunburn, and she had said it in one of her talks, and I remember hearing it, but then I heard it come from a different source today, and it dropped. And she said, oh, you know, the reason basically that we burn when we go out into the sun is because we many times, well, number one, we haven't built up a solar callus. So we go from the middle of winter to the middle of summer, and the body has to build up an array of frequencies through the retinas, through our eyes, to understand what frequencies are present, so it knows how to respond via the skin to what's there. So if we go outside with sunglasses on, we're more likely to burn because we are blocking the solar rays coming through the iris obviously into the brain, and gathering that information about what's there, what's in the rays, what do I need to protect myself from. If we're not getting that, we burn. And so I just sat back and thought, that makes so much sense to me, it's just ridiculous. And I too am going, I don't know about you, Rebel, but going through the process of peeling myself away from sunglasses and walking outside the first few months walking outside like I was a bit of a like Dracula's mistress or something, you know. But now I walk out in the morning and get my 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. very important rays in the morning. And science is now proving that light spectrum, particularly 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is so important to us, particularly dawn, so drastically, incredibly important to us. But we're not getting it. Obviously many of us like to sleep in, understandably, but we're not getting those full spectrum.
I just love that you're saying this, Angela. I really do, because, you know, in yoga we talk about one of the best cures for depression is to get out when the sun first comes up over that horizon. That's and that particular form of light, if we can just literally wind bathe, like if we could, if we were in a position to strip off and just be there with that sun coming all over our body.
Literally 2 to 5 minutes is all you would need. And I didn't realize, I always saw light as if I have to be sitting in the stream of the light, but light actually acts like water. So but you must be either outside, number one, be great to be able to sky gaze at that time of day. You can, it's not like it's bright. And also, like if you have to be inside at that time, because of, you know, how wonderful we are with creating technology to block the sun coming through the glass so that we can keep warm or keep cool, all of the rays don't come through the glass. So we must open the glass window. It can come through the netting, through the gauze, whatever you call it, but it acts like water.
Yeah.
So as long as you have the window open, it flows into your environment like water. And then of course, so it's getting all those spectrums in, and every spectrum that we need, like nutrition for the mitochondria, is present at dawn up until maybe 10. You've got about a 2-hour period where it's most potent, but dawn is key. And then of course the spectrum starts to cut away as the day goes on. Until sunset, you only have far infrared. So if you have inflammation, I would be saying go and sit in the sunset, because that far infrared will be having an incredible impact on your body and resetting you, and asking the body, then the body sees the light, it gets the information in, it's time to start producing melatonin. And then exactly. And I always thought melatonin was,
when you were saying that, sorry to interrupt you, but hence the rise in infrared saunas and their effectability and their efficiency. And it's also when you were saying that about the water, the other thing that I'd like to add in there, because I haven't said much about water, and water's a lot about my business, because our lymphatic system runs parallel to our circulatory system. And when we work the lymphatic system, because it doesn't have a pump, but when we work it, whether it's impaired or not impaired, that water within us can flow not just double the amount, but 2,000% more. So from 2 litres being pumped around our body a day, when you have a manual lymphatic massage, it can go up to 20 litres. And that's our transport of our waste. And so when you are exposed to those infrared rays, it makes such a big difference to depositing our waste, but we need some way of getting it out of our body if our lymph isn't working. Yeah.
That's right. And I think what's amazing, just to finish that tiny bit off, the importance then of managing evening, because daytime we're not getting enough of the natural rays to set the circadian rhythms. If we don't then start to cut out the unnatural or blue light, we are living in, which is because we've got phones in front of ourselves now until probably we go to bed. So that blue light sends a message straight to the brain and says it's time to pump cortisol. So because we're looking at that blue light all day long, we're in a perpetual day, and we don't produce then the melatonin. And I thought melatonin was just about sleep, but it's the healing balm of the body. So if we're then not getting the sleep and the melatonin is not being produced, we're in a lot of inflammatory trouble. So yeah.
Oh, it's just also interlinked, and there's several things that have come up for me thinking about, the sun having infrared rays at sunset, and then technology catching up to it by providing infrared capacity to sit in a small room and receive infrared. How amazing, what a time we're living in. Really, there's a lot of old ways new. And I wonder, Emma, when I'm listening to all that, I'm thinking about women's flow and their rhythms, and how many, when you think into what blocks a woman being in flow and in rhythm, what's the biggest cause that you put your finger on out there as a practitioner?
That's such a good question. And I think it's the connection to their body. I think it's that disconnect that a lot of women, particularly in Sydney and a lot of our sort of modern cities, have with themselves and with their intuition, like we were saying earlier about the intuition is a really key part of healing, and that's part of our role as natural practitioners, is to really, I guess, educate that and facilitate the space for that. And I think it's that mind-body connection. But it's really interesting, I guess, that piece that we were just talking about in terms of water. It made me think of that study by the Japanese professor, I think his name was Emoto, and he studied the effects of the emotions and self-talk on the way that water was expressing itself. And so I think that there was study done on particular different water crystals and the way that he had expressed certain emotions towards those different containers of water, and showing the way that those crystals formed. And if you think about the human body, and particularly the women's body in terms of menstruation, such a big part of it is made of water. And so if our emotions and our mentality towards ourselves is really negative or really self-depreciating, that's really changing the physiology. And we know that now, thanks to science, we can see that. And so I think, in traditional medicine, we've known that for many, many years, but now the science is proving that, thanks to those beautiful studies. So I really think it's that mind-body connection. And I think it's the way that we are hard on ourselves as women.
Hard on ourselves. That's a really good word, isn't it? Because, I guess it's not only women, of course, men also harden themselves, but, toughen up, that kind of call that has gone out across, especially in Australia. We've been asked to harden up an awful lot. It's been a pretty tough few hundred years around here. So people have had to harden themselves. And I'm fond of saying when I'm teaching yoga that, we start off and we're little and we can stick our toe in our mouth and rub it behind our head, and we're all giggles and burbles and laugh and very, very fluid. And then stuff happens. Your mum yells at you, or your boyfriend breaks up with you, or, you get hit, you fall off something. And as life goes on, you get smaller and smaller and more damaged. And if you don't keep working through yoga or some other mechanism to release those tensions, you get really hard. You get woody and brittle, and you break and you snap. And, I think that perhaps I love that the conversation in not under an hour has gone straight out there into this movement of light and water, and you know, the flow that we need to be in to maintain and develop and be strengthened and to be held in our own health and wellness. It's really a beautiful thing that we're all so passionate about it. It's yummy, actually. Yeah.
We just said the word flow, Cate, and I think one of the you know, breakdowns of the word, if we look at the etymology of the word traditional, it comes from transmission or flow or handing down of. And certainly one of the things I've got great respect for in what I do as a yoga teacher is the lineage and the handing down of knowledge, but also all my teachers, you know, past and present, referring back to their teachers and the handing down of this wisdom, things that have been, you know, trials and errors, you know, let's pass down the things that work. And then eventually over time, we have this beautiful modern backing of traditional ways. And the bringing the two together, you know, is becoming more and more accepted. It's becoming more and more spoken about, this link. There's more and more medical model practitioners coming to integrative or functional or complementary medicines and delving into traditional practices and discovering there's a lot of evidence to back what we do. When you look,
a ton of evidence, and it's like the bridge, Rebel, isn't it? You know, like, I think to speak to both of you, Emma and Rebel, like what you were saying, Emma, is you feel like it's a hardening against the world, but it's also people's negative self-talk and their disconnection, therefore, about who they are in the world, their body, their mind, their spirit. And that negative self-talk means it makes it very, very hard for your intuition to actually happen, because you doubt yourself on every level. So intuition, I mean, personally speaking, I think we all know, you know, we know what we don't know. But the more you come into your own, the more you're able to use that intuition and to respect yourself enough to know that whatever is bubbling away is very likely to be accurate, you know, or to express something that needs to be expressed. So it's that kind of thing. And perhaps all of us, or who've been in these professions for so long and learnt to listen, because, you know, like Jo, your visceral manipulation, for example, it's so subtle and so based on your intuitive thing.
And it's so subtle, but when you were going back to about movement and vibration, that I was just looking up a quote about the viscera and about the motility and the mobility. That's what visceral manipulation is based on, is that all organs and all soft connective tissue, which we know as the viscera, is based on not just its mobility, but its motility. And I just want to read a little quote, and it's by Jean-Pierre Barral, who's the founder of visceral manipulation. And it goes, the viscera have an intrinsic active motion, which we call motility. Motility is perceptible to the hand, but requires an educated sense of touch. And it's embryological. It's in the development of the embryo that we first start to feel this motility. And when motility stops and mobility, that's when inflammation starts to happen. And so all the time we're trying to come back to that vibration of finding the oscillation between the motion and its original position. So in visceral work, we talk about the in-sphere and the ex-sphere, and it's a cycle that happens 7 to 8 times a minute. And in lymphatic motion, it's 6 to 7 seconds there's movement. And there's a crossover. In fascia, they talk it as being a lot longer, like a lot longer, in months of movements by millimeters. It's so interesting that vibration, which is movement, which is energy, it's all so related. And science, what you were saying before, what you both, all three of you were saying before, is so connected to this movement. And movement, of course, and vibration is the spectrum of light. And we measure that, you know, in hertz. And it's so crossing over. It's just, yeah, science is just playing catch up. And medicine's way behind that.
But unfortunately, in the process, you know, like in the process of not knowing this, which we all did, I think, in the process of losing this knowledge, in the process of coming inside 4 walls, of being disconnected from starlight, moonlight, you know, the rise and the fall of the sun every day, in the loss of that connection, and replacing our source of knowledge, our own intuition, our own lineages and elders with science, and not believing anything unless science backs it up. We've lost so much, you know, and now we're in the process where science has to be that bridge. So we have to, as I think, as a collective of traditional holistic therapists, to really pay a lot of attention to reaching our hand across that bridge and helping people understand through scientific know-how and research and anything we can think of to help them walk that bridge across to where we're knowing or where we're practicing. Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of us here are part, well, you're all part of ATMS, so that's fabulous. And moments like this, when we all come together and start to talk, and everything else that ATMS does, everything else that SoulAdvisor does, everything else that all the other associations are doing, are about trying to really get that base of security for people to go, oh, okay, it's yoga, she's qualified by Yoga Australia, I can go there. That person is in ATMS, I can trust, you know, and making them feel secure in an area that they may have become disconnected from. I'd love to hear thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think that element of trust is really important. And, you know, I guess I've made mistakes of following people who I thought were well educated, and only to find out that perhaps, you know, there was an agenda behind it in the past. So I tend to come up to things now with a healthy dose of skepticism and a voluminous amount of personal research in anything I do, because of course that is going to be something that I then transmit down to my clients and patients and students. So, you know, it really does behoove me to kind of understand and know and work out whether or not what I'm leaning on is a trusted and reliable source. So I am on the board of Yoga Australia, and I've been a member of Yoga Australia for quite some time now as a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist. And I do like the idea of standards and a code of conduct and ethics to follow, because we do know that in this industry, being that it is self-regulated as naturopaths and kinesiologists and yoga therapists and yoga teachers, that we need to therefore self-regulate and make sure that that which is being handed on and taught and practiced and, you know, certified is something worthwhile handing on and transmitting and certifying and creating standards around. So when I look to others, I like to see that they have a membership with organisations such as ATMS or you know, Yoga Australia. So it gives me a bit of confidence. And so I think that the people that put these things together are doing so in good faith, that they are wanting to hold themselves and others to a high standard and maintain the tradition of their practices. And, you know, when we look towards things being boxed in, you know, we need to understand that basics are really good, and we need to allow for personalised practices in that. So, you know, being on the board of Yoga Australia, it's like, yes, there's a standard, and then what else can we bring to the table that is part of that tradition, and what lineages can we also respect and, you know, keep alive? So we don't want to box things in so that things become so rigid and stiff that anybody's scared to move or breathe or speak to something new, because part of tradition is also living in the moment and taking in our own and others and our patients and students' experiences and adjusting and steering course constantly. That's part of the individuality and the holism and the connectedness of all our practices.
Beautifully said. And I think, you know, that once we stop learning, we're dead, you know, like why we're here to learn, and we're learning together. And that's what's so exciting about something like this, where we all get to cross-reference and talk and be part of it. And so, you know, like it any culture, whether it be in an association or in a, you know, a nation, needs to keep growing. It needs to keep having response to what's going on, and having interaction with the wider sphere, doesn't it? Otherwise, again, coming back to that flow, you're out of the flow. If you just say, no, this is our perimeter and we're not going any further, and all of you be damned out there, then you soon get stale and topple over. Yeah.
And this idea of self-governing, you know, that we ourselves are sovereign in our traditional practices, and to maintain connection to that and to the lineage and to the new. So to not give over power to organisations that might not understand what we do. You know, I really like this idea of self-regulatory models. And, you know, it speaks to the loss of natural therapies off the private health insurance scheme. I've been attending those meetings as a representative of yoga and yoga therapy as Yoga Australia board member. They're not the most exciting meetings in the board, and although they're meant to be listening to us, it's directly a one-way conversation. However, they did ask for our input, and we were able to hand over 42 pages of beautiful evidence for the efficacy of yoga and yoga therapy.
I noticed a couple of questions in the chat, Cate.
Yeah. Oh, here's one. Sorry. Hi, Carmen. Thank you very much, Emma. Would you like to answer that in words as well?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think 2 litres should be sort of a minimum of water for adult women. And that's good quality water too, because there's a really big difference between just our tap water and good quality water. So if you're lucky enough to live where you can have beautiful fresh spring water, which not many of us are, I would recommend getting a filter that filters out a lot of the nasty chemicals that come out through the tap. And then if you're breastfeeding, definitely an extra litre minimum. And then probably an extra half a litre if you're exercising or really sweating, if you're going to the beach or somewhere super hot. So yeah, that's kind of just a baseline of water intake that I recommend.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question, Carmen. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier. But it's you know, it's all part of the same rich context, isn't it, of staying in the flow, keeping fresh, keeping renewed, and allowing fresh ideas to come in and getting rid of old ideas that don't work. So I wonder what, Angela, you're excited about in your field of kinesiology. Are you part of the Kinesiology Association or ATMS or both?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, both. So I am an ambassador for this year's Australian Traditional Medicine Natural Therapies Week. So I'm very, very proud to be an ambassador. Yeah. I actually was one of the highly commended runners-up of the 2022 Australian Traditional Medicine Society Practitioner of the Year. So I was really proud to represent kinesiologists in that, and to be chosen to be one of four practitioners in the whole of Australia, thousands of applications. To come down to 4 it was just the most incredible honor. And I know, you know, all of us who are on here are practitioners. I'm sure we don't do it necessarily you know, for the accolades. I'm sure we don't do it for those, but you know what, after 20 years it was so nice to actually have acknowledgement of what I do, and literally now, if I sat down and told you how many hours and how many clients I've seen since 2006, it kind of blows my mind. And the differences we're all out there making. So yes, I am with the HMS, and really loving that, and I've noticed that they've really stepped up in the last 2 years with their marketing and their commitment to promoting natural traditional therapies, which is amazing. And I'm also with the AKA as well, and have been ever since my birth into becoming a kinesiology practitioner for many, many years. So definitely. And I think the one thing that just came to mind when I was thinking about the whole concept of being a part of the Australian Traditional Medicine Society, I often look at my certificate on the wall and see that and think, you know what, as the word therapist, we throw that around, and we, you know, practitioner. But to say that you're a practitioner of another type of medicine is what actually I like. And it's that whole concept that all things can be medicine. Light can be medicine, color can be medicine, Sound can be medicine to the human body. Vibration can be medicine. Fluid and water and massage and actually being moved to the soul can be medicine. Some people could be getting all of those things and more. And my experience is that someone just hasn't been moved. Like, I don't mean like moving, I mean like moved. And sometimes to be moved can be enough, and you eat pizza all day. And it's inexplicable as to why that person can shift and heal from incredible illnesses, and yet they're moved. And so I like that we look at, you know, let food be thy medicine, let our society be thy medicine, let our gatherings be thy medicine, let our families be thy medicine, let our, you know, connectiveness, our friendships be thy medicine. And I think if we looked at life like that, and as practitioners, whether it be herbal or naturopaths, everything that we're doing, everything that we're touching, whether and frequency medicines, homeopathics, it's all just another type of medicine, and it's coming to that place where we can all stand on a level plat field. You know, if I had a car accident and, you know, needed to sew up my arm, I'm sure I don't want my husband to do it. I want a surgeon. You know, so, you know, it's like coming to that place where we all know our role around and what our medicine is. And I love that about the HMS, that it's medicine of a different type. Yeah.
Accessible medicine that can be used from the beginning, you know, for preventative medicine. And even preventative, when I say that word, I kind of cringe, because it means that we're always shoring out something that might happen to us. But it's just, you know, I love the idea that we've all been coming up with this evening about staying in the flow. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah. I'm, you know, one of the exciting things for Tanya and I, and hopefully for all of you other people out there, is we've started our founder, the founder of SoulAdvisor, whose name is Elaine Nguyen. She's in Cambodia, and she has been tireless in supporting SoulAdvisor and what we all stand for. But she's also now invested in the biggest wellness center in Southeast Asia, and it's beautiful. It's in Cambodia. It's 15 minutes drive from Angkor Wat, maybe a 22-minute cycle. And the magic of that tradition just emanates in that particular part of the world. It's Siem Reap. It's beautiful. And it's what she's trying to do there is bring therapists like all of us from across the world, and also people who want healing, to come together and start to explore what is the best practice, what can our traditions throw us. Let's thresh all this out and see how we all fit together and find our place, so that nobody falls through the cracks anymore, you know, so we don't have this world of health that's really metered out in a very inequitable way, that we all understand that health is our birthright. So Tanya and I and the rest of the team have been working hard to actualize that, the vision of SoulAdvisor, and the vision that all of us are having in a really, really beautiful and international way. So it's exciting. That's my excitement at the moment. I'd love to know what you're excited about in your professions, like Joe or Emma. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm excited. There was it wasn't a new discovery, but it's something that's been published recently, which sometimes can lag behind what we all know, the publishing. And it's about the lymphatic system, and it's about the brain. And New Scientist did a publication earlier this year on the glymphatic system. And I don't know whether any of you have heard of that. Has anyone here heard of the glymphatic?
Yeah.
You have?
Please explain.
Yeah.
So we all know our brain has a dura, that we have cerebral spinal fluid and different layers, the meninges and other layers that go around our brain. And that's where fluid is exchanged, just like in our gut, in our omentum, and our other mesenteries that surround our bowel that give fluid and exchange bacteria. Around our brain, we have different layers, and the cerebral spinal fluid, as we know, goes down through our cord. And the glymphatic system is part of the lymphatic system in our brain, and they've discovered that this is where they always thought it always happened when we're in deep sleep in REM, where exchange, our waste proteins get taken up, not just our proteins waste, but other waste gets taken out of our brain and carried by our lymphatic system into our lymphatic system and out through our excretory systems. But they've discovered through MRI and other, more recent technologies integrating them that it actually happens all the time, and that when we don't get REM sleep, it doesn't work as effectively. That's the difference. But like the lymphatics, that how important it is to get quality sleep, and that links back to what we were saying before about the blue light and the cortisol and all the other discussion that we had earlier. But the lymphatic system is that one of the reasons that they hadn't actually found this system so clearly is because when we die, when they do the dissections, it dissolves straight away. It's only during live surgery that a neurosurgeon discovered it, and it's now just been written up about how vital it is. Yeah. So
Wonderful.
yeah, that's what I'm excited about, that there'll be new breakthroughs with lymph work. Yeah, lymph training, and I actually think lymph yoga will be a big thing.
Do they call that glimpse? Like
lymph? Like lymph with a GLYMPH. Yeah,
glimpse.
Lymphatic.
All right, beautiful.
We
Thank
have
you.
a question actually, and a comment from Michelle McPherson.
Thank you.
In the chat, if anyone would like to take that on.
Think of the lymphatic system.
I think Michelle is just reiterating some of the things that Jo and Emma and myself have been saying in regards to the systems of the body all working together. And one of the things that Michelle has said is it's like taking out the garbage. It's it's a removal system that happens unconsciously, and that one of the beautiful things about, I think, what I'm excited about in this era is we're constantly learning. We've got a constant opportunity every single day to do something new and to live well. And it's about teaching others and sharing what we know through these new mediums so that we can reach more and more people and get them to live well and be proactive and get them to do stuff that takes the garbage out in ways that are really conscious, so that we're being proactive about our health, which is, to me, the real emphasis in, holistic medicine. Medicine is this preventative nature, and it's about living well so that our whole system works better and so that it functions more easily. The terrain theory. So we're working on this terrain, all the inputs that we put into our system from light, looking at our non-native light compared to our natural light, looking at food as medicine. Food isn't medicine, it can be poison or medicine, looking at relationships, same thing, medicine or poison. So where's our role in it, and that question to all my clients that I typically ask, what do you think is going on? An important question to get from them, their intuition. So so Michelle, I think, is definitely on the same page as all of us there, in that she understands the importance of taking out the trash.
Thanks, Michelle. And Emma, how about you? What are you excited about?
I think for me, I'm excited about just the general acceptance that I've seen for traditional or complementary medicines develop, especially over the last few years, which has been pretty tough for people. And I think there's been a bit of hesitancy or resistance for the allopathic options that people have been receiving or that were offered to them. And I think that through that, people have gone searching for what else is out there. And I think that that's opened up so much more for us as practitioners of naturopathy and kinesiology and lymphatic massage and yoga and all the other beautiful practices that are part of the traditional medicine society that we're part of. So I think that the general acceptance and willingness of the general population and that sort of expanding of consciousness that people seem to be experiencing around that. And then I think also for me is, I never thought that I would say this, but technology I'm really quite excited about. And I think that's also another development thanks to COVID. You know, I see predominantly telehealth patients now. And I think the beauty in that is that no matter where you live, you have access to practitioners that you may never have had access to before. And with things like this, you know, these forums and these webinars, it's educating people and allowing people to kind of access things that they never would have been able to. So I think, you know, with technology comes that sort of, you know, doctor Googling and misdiagnosing and that kind of thing, but it also really opens the door up for accessibility. And I think that that's really important for this time, is that people have access to naturopaths and kinesiologists and other practitioners that maybe aren't in their hometown, especially if they live somewhere remote or not close to a big city. So yeah, that's what I'm really excited about at the moment.
Thank you. You know, when you say that, I'm thinking into the dark wilds of COVID that we've all just been through. And and do you remember, I don't know if any of you went, but Thomas Hubel's incredible conference on trauma, the trauma base that we're all carrying and how to deal with that. And he had great people come in and talk. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think it was above 50,000 people went to that, Emma. So, you know, 50,000 people having access to understanding their own trauma, the secondary trauma, tertiary trauma, the trauma of the planet, and what might be done about it was really, really a moment for me. Yeah. Angela, what are you excited about?
Oh, wow. So many things. I'm actually really excited about the fact that as much as COVID was it was a difficult time for many of us as practitioners. And, you know, for me, I know there was quite a few months where I wasn't even sure whether I could continue to practice with, it was a knife's edge there for a little while for many of us with what we were deciding and the pathways we were deciding and taking a stand for. And so I'm excited that actually on the back of that, what's happened is as people have felt, you know, maybe the more, you know, modern medicine, not really hearing them, having certain issues, whatever. There's also long lines of people trying to get in to see specialists and all sorts of things. And next thing you know, they're actually thinking, well, maybe I need to look further afield. Maybe I need to look into something else where I feel like I'm getting heard or having this seen to, or maybe they're going to the usual GPs and whatnot and maybe not being able to get answers around things and starting to become more open to, well, what else is out there. And I know for me in the last 18 to 20 years, my experience mostly with many clients is to come in and say, my friend said I should come. I don't know what you're doing, a kinesi what? Like it was always like kinesi what is it? Like could never say it. I'm getting that less and less in the last few months where people are coming in and say, oh, you know, I've just got to have a kinesiologist. Everyone's got a kinesiologist now. You've just got, it's like having a really good handbag. You just have to have the one, like and a really good one. You know, it's like, oh, you know, and your naturopath, and people have got this, you know, amazing dovetail of, yes, and my naturopath, and oh, I went to my osteopath, and I went to my herbalist, and they've kind of got this tool bag now of people that they can see, and they know that there's times when you do need to go and see your GP, but there's people they can see to look at things. So I'm excited about that, and the commitment I've made to interview as many kinesiologists, neurologists even. Like I'm so fascinated with the brain and the neurology, but people in our fields, and get to understand more about what we do, what it is that we do, what it is, what it isn't. And expand that and get that information out to the general public so that they know that it's something that they can access and not be weird about it. You know, I think, I don't know what that is. I don't know how many husbands I've had come in and go, my wife said I have to be here, you know. So I'm like, good on
So
you.
true.
It's so true. Like my wife said I have to be here. So I'm excited about what we're doing, receiving more credibility and more understanding in the general public, and I think what excites me most is that, you know, I've often toyed with changing my business name to The Last Resort Right, lastresort.com.au, because every other person would come in and say, I've been here, I've been there, I've seen every specialist under the sun. I'm sure we could all call our business that, really. And now I'm like, I don't know what else to do, and so someone said I should try this, and so I'm here. So I'm excited that this year I feel like there's now a shift, and people are like, actually my first port of call is to go and see my naturopath, to go and see my kinesiologist, and the naturopath will say, listen, we can deal with this, this and this, but I feel like there's some stuff going on here around trauma, maybe go see a kinesiologist. And we're all working together as this holistic fascia, like fascia on the planet, helping one another, bouncing off one another, understanding more of what we all do together, and just helping humanity become the best versions. I think we're in a time where there's the possibility more than ever before, even years and years and years ago, more than ever before, we've got a possibility of being the best version of ourselves we could ever imagine. Oh, so that's good. What I'm excited about.
And that just pushes me right into, I'm even more excited because I think if we are the best version of ourselves, then we're not, I'm not going to say waste, because it's never a waste being alive ever, but like we're not spending so much energy trying to get over our own trauma and dysfunction and all the rest of it, and we have more of us available to be of service to the planet and actually come back into the highest state of being a human, which is custodianship, proper custodianship, where we're connected.
I like to look at it just quickly. I like to look at it. Often people say, what do you mean when we work with kinesiology, what are we doing? And I say, well, you know how on your phone you've got tabs? And I'm one of those old, like apparently over 40-year-old. And if you have like more than 20 tabs, you're like really uncool. So you know how on your phone, if you flick, you've got tabs of all the things that you've looked at in the last while, right? So if we think of all the traumas and experiences that we haven't yet put away into the place that they, the resolved file, then they remain a tab. And what happens then is, while ever those tabs are still in play on your phone, they're a drain on the system. And you can't see them. All I can see is what I'm currently looking at, which is whatever on Facebook. But the tabs are there. They're all there all the time whenever you open your phone. So what we're doing in kinesiology is just sorting and flicking the tabs so that your phone, we're doing a defrag for all those people who used to do those on your computer. We're doing a defrag and then allowing more energy for the things that are happening in the present moment, rather than all the energy being, pulled away from, having to defend, be in defense, keep ourselves safe, all those primitive reflexes being on all the time. And it's draining for the system.
Thank you. It's so true. And here we are at flow again. And Rebel, you've got to flow out the door because you've got people to talk slow.
People wanting to come in. So I'll go do what I love, which is yoga and sharing traditional practices. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, ATMS and SoulAdvisor, and our other presenters, and to everybody who showed up. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebel, so much. Rebel. And always pearls of wisdom, that woman. Now I'm wondering if anybody's got questions to anyone other than Rebel that they might like to pose. We will finish in 9 minutes because we're very strict at this time of night, because people have to rest and eat and not get too excited. I mean, I'm sure that all of us could talk forever about this subject, but let's contain it at 7:30. Are there any questions, anyone? We've flabbergasted them. Oh, there doesn't have to be any questions. I mean, it's I feel like what we've been talking about tonight in such excited tones, and thank you, Emma, and thank you, Angela. Thank you so much, Jo, for getting on and talking and helping everyone get so excited about where we're at, and where we're going and who we are in this world. So love having you all here, and this now is going to be over on the SoulAdvisor YouTube, along with a whole lot of other interviews that we've done in the last few years. If you haven't explored SoulAdvisor YouTube, maybe Tan, could you put it in the chat just so people can copy paste? That'd be amazing. Yeah, we'd love you to go over there. We'd also love you to subscribe, which simply means tick the subscribe button, and then you'll hear if we put anything else that's cool and amazing up there. But yeah, really huge thanks, Emma, for coming on and sharing your wisdom, Angela, your wisdom, and Joe, your wisdom, and Tan for bringing it all together tonight. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful evening out there. And any questions that occur to you at midnight, just yeah, don't text us, but do email us, and we'll deal with them in the morning. So, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Good night.
Kate.
Thank you.
Good night,
and
everybody.
thanks.
Thanks for
Good
coming.
night, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.